Welcome to Shannons Club TV, where we examine the legacy of cars from Australian roads and racetracks.
In each episode, we take a closer look at our feature car with selected archival images and meet a proud owner. We'll also get some handy advice from the Shannons auctions team.
In today's episode, the Italian sedan that combined passenger car comfort with a distinct sporting edge, the Alfa Romeo Giulia.
Alfa Romeo's compact Giulia TI sedan weighed less than a tonne and was promoted as a six-seater, with the first examples having a column gear change, a feature that was very popular in the 1950s. The Giulia was 5 inches shorter than Ford's Cortina, launched in the same year. But the Giulia Super 1600, introduced locally in 1966, had discs all round, 5 on the floor, and easily topped the old tonne. Its twin-cam engine, a jewel of a thing, had dual twin-choke Webers. About the only other marque to combine four-door bodywork and twin overhead camshafts in this time frame was Jaguar. Later came the 1300 Ti, which combined all the wonderful qualities of the 1.6 engine variants with rather less performance. Mark, was the victory of a Giulia in the 1964 Sandown 6 Hour the key to Alfa Romeo's acceptance in the Australian market?
Oh, I really think it was. And it went beyond public acceptance. I think that victory, impressed Alfa Romeo management in Italy so much that they awarded Alec Mildren distribution rights for New South Wales and Queensland. And as a result of that, then some well-known drivers started to be set up as dealers, like Brian Foley in Sydney. You had John French in Queensland, Bob Jane in Melbourne. So all of a sudden, this brand was being driven by this very prestigious motorsport background, and sales really started to take off.
A great beginning, isn't it? Really, when you think about it.
So if you talk about that Sandown 6 Hour victory, I think it was pivotal for Alfa Romeo in Australia.
Terrific,
yeah.
Terrific. At the time, some magazine testers were less than convinced of the car's boxy appearance, but it has aged superbly, probably better than Bertoni's celebrated coupe version. The cam-style rear end with its sharp cut-off doubtless contributed to the sedans achieving a superior aerodynamic CD figure than the rakish coupe. Having owned one Giulia Super and two 105 series coupes, I can testify to the sedan's superior quietness at cruising speeds and the sense that it cleaved the air better. The interior was gorgeous, with lovely large gauges, genuine wood trim in places and comfortable seats. The gear change was magnificent, and there was a big, well-shaped boot. The Giulia was considerably more expensive than the bargain basement Fiat 125 sedan, but it was faster and its fittings and finish were obviously superior. On paper, and at least up to perhaps 80 miles an hour, a 186S 4-speed HR Holden might have equalled the Giulia Super in performance, but in every other respect was far inferior. The fact that the 1600-engined Giulia Sprint GTs, the coupes, almost beat the Falcon GTs at Bathurst kind of proves this point, I think. In summary, the Giulia sedans were boxy, but once you discovered the jewel inside the box, you would forever see them as beautiful. Mark, I'm thinking that Sandown victory had more to do with braking and fuel economy than it did with engine performance.
Oh, it sure did. I mean, if he was able to topple a monster like Lex Davison's 7-litre Ford Galaxy with little more than, faultless reliability and relentless pace. Alfa Romeo's 105 series coupe has a glittering motorsport history, which includes several Bathurst class wins. However, it could not match the unique achievement of its Giulia sedan stablemate, which won both Sandown International 6 Hour races outright, thanks to a rare, factory-built lightweight that excelled in endurance racing. This competition version was called the TI Super. TI was an acronym of a popular Italian touring car category called the Turismo Internazionale, and it was super thanks to a large reduction in weight, uprated suspension, and a more powerful version of the base TI's 1.6-litre twin cam, complete with twin Weber carburetors. The TI Super was homologated in 1964 and proved a solid contender in both European and North American touring car racing. Although it struggled to match the raw speed of Ford's latest Cortinas, the Italian sedan's strength was long-distance events, where its durability and clockwork consistency could really shine in the classic hare versus tortoise tradition. John, this must bring back some fond memories of your Giulia Super, which is a car I know you really love.
Yeah, it does. Look, it was a really beautiful little car. At the time I had an Alfetta 1.8 which I was racing, and there was no real comparison in the performance. But I used to keep fantasising about this Giulia Super, that if it just had a stove-hot 2-litre engine in it, what a weapon it would have been. And still just such a beautiful classic. Really a singular car.
But even in its standard trim, I rode in one. Just the steering, the braking, the handling, the ride quality, it was outstanding for its time.
Oh, for its era, it was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah,
it was ahead of its time, I think.
It was,
including the styling.
Yes, there you go.
The TI Super's global reach included Australia, where Alfa Romeo importer and race team owner Alec Mildren snared a pair of remarkable victories. His left-hand drive TI Super, shared by Ralph Sachs and Italian works driver Roberto Bussanello, was outgunned in qualifying for the 1964 Sandown International 6-hour. Bussanello started well down the grid, but relentlessly climbed the leaderboard as one by one the faster cars ahead of him suffered problems, mostly to do with brakes. For 6 hours, the disc-braked Alfa didn't miss a beat, on its way to a demoralising 7-lap victory which stunned unsuspecting rivals. Mildren returned in 1965 to prove it was no fluke, but this time armed with an exotic new 105 Series GTA for Bussanello and Sachs, with the TI Super relegated to a backup role for Aussie stars Frank Gardner and Kevin Bartlett. Which was just as well, after the race-leading GTA blew its engine in the 3rd hour and the trusty TI Super powered home to another emphatic victory. As a result, the Giulia, in its rare TI Super specification, will always be remembered as one of Alfa Romeo's finest endurance races. Remember to join the Shannons Club, where you can connect with other enthusiasts around the country.
Yeah, Barry Edmonds. My car is a 1967 Alfa Romeo Giulia Super. It's great. They've got great character. It's a great conversation starter. I bought the car in 1995. Once I got the car, I eventually got into the restoration, did a complete restoration from ground up. It's all standard Alfa Romeo stuff. Repainted the car. It was originally dark green. It's a black, but it was painted 20 years ago. The wheels are 15-inch, tyres are Pirelli. It's a standard 2-litre Alfa Romeo engine. I think one of the appealing things of the older cars is that if you lift the bonnet you can see and fix whatever the problem is, whereas today's cars you can't do that. The vinyl seats, they'd have been done 12 years ago. They're very supportive seats, so you can do long distances without getting tired. I've had a variety of cars, but this is by far and away the best handling car that I've ever had. It's just a fun car to drive. It's great on the highway. It's reliable, it's economical. It's got all the performance I need from a car. It is just it's a joy to drive. I've been a Shannons member for 6 or 7 years now, and service was great for them. Can't speak highly enough of the service that they provide. In the early 80s, I joined the Alfa Romeo Club here in Melbourne, and I've been a member ever since. I currently edit the club magazine, Cross and Serpent. The club is very active and still growing. I don't have any plans to change anything or upgrade it now. It's all that I want. I've told my family I want to be buried in it.
Well, Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon has dropped by to bring us up to speed on the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Welcome, mate.
Hey, John.
The Alfa Romeo Giulia, Chris, was a beautiful little car in its
Sure
day,
was.
and I guess
Yeah.
even more sought after now.
It is, isn't it? I mean, it's really been one of those cars that, you know, we saw the car in many movies over the years, you know, made famous in the Italian Job, being used by the police.
Yes.
I think it's been one of those practical four-door sedans, compact sedans that I think today enthusiasts, you know, that potentially don't want to spend the money of a 2-litre or 1750 GTV are looking at the Giulia Super as an alternative, and something that's practical, take the family and kids out.
Sure is.
It's in lots of ways it's a better car. It's actually more aerodynamically efficient. This is such a paradox. It's hard to believe that this such a boxy little sedan cleaves through the air better than the coupe.
I mean, you know, the styling was always controversial, but it seems to have stood the test of time pretty well. I think it's actually got better with age.
It has, hasn't it? It is
Yeah.
one of those cars that you do look back and you go, actually, it's actually quite a smart looking car.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the beautiful little chrome details around the car. You know, I've had the opportunity to, you know, use one as a tarmac rally car, and it's been a really fun car. Yeah.
Well, we had some interesting models in Australia. The 1.3 litre. We didn't get the TI Super, the homologation special. We'll talk about that later. And of course the 1600 or the Super, which people really relate to in
1600,
Australia. That was a great car, wasn't it?
They're a great little car, and I think, you know, the 1600's just got a little bit more oomph than the 1300.
Yeah, the
and,
twin Webbers.
And look, it's a car that we actually see used, you know, by enthusiasts today on club runs and, you know, out for cars and coffee and events like that. So it's great to see them out again.
Chris, I owned a Giulia Super sedan, a lovely white car, and my fantasy was always to put a work 2-litre engine in it, and I guess a lot of alcoholics have done that.
Yeah.
I don't think that would hurt the value, would it, in a car like that? What do you think?
Not really. Look, I think it depends what you're wanting to do with it. You know, if you're wanting the car to be a concourse car, well, then leave it as original as possible. If you are wanting to do a bit of competition, and obviously the Alpha car clubs around Australia are very active at,
They are.
at sprint and club days.
Yes.
And look, there are a few Giulia Supers running around with 2-litre engines in them, so it's actually a good little option.
When we talk about rare versions, though, the TI Super, you know, there was only 500 or 501 made.
Yes.
A lot of them were for
Homologato.
for competition use.
Yep.
They weren't sold here, but what's the chances of finding one in Europe? Because they must be now highly sought after because the production number was so small.
That's right. Yeah. It's definitely one of those ones to look out for. I mean, you know, it's hard to know how many are physically here in Australia, but it's definitely at the top of the tree as far as Giulia Supers go.
I guess rust is always going to be an issue, but from my experience, those cars don't rust nearly as badly as the Alfettas that followed them. Would that be right? Is that?
Yeah, I think we've tended to see that they haven't really sort of suffered as badly from the rust issues, and I think that's because being a 60s car, I think the use of metal in the 60s by Alfa was a better quality metal than they were used in the 70s and 80s. Yes.
Yep.
So in terms of desirability or collectability, we've got the 1.3 model and the 1.6. So I imagine the 1.6 is the most desirable. How's that work?
I would think the 1.6 is probably favoured over the 1.3.
So what's the advice for someone who wants to get one? I mean, we always talk about the Alfa Romeo clubs. They're very, very active, very passionate about the product. Would that be the best place to go for best stop?
You could probably start there at the Alfa Romeo car clubs. If not, check out the classifieds. We sometimes get them through the auction as well.
Okay.
But I think with anything, you know, like an Alfa, you know, look at the service history, the restoration work that's been done to it, maintenance. You know, those points are important on it. And look, they're fairly simple cars to work on at the end of the day. And but you know, I think a lot of fun for the money.
Excellent, great advice. Thanks, Chris. And remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest Shannons auctions news on the Shannons Club website. If you want a lasting memory of the Alfa Romeo Giulia in competition, check out the huge archive at autopix.com.au. It's interesting, John, reflecting on the 105 series Alphas, you know, the coupes and the sedans. The coupes have been like the star car. You talk about general public, they think about Alfa Romeo, that's the car they think about. But I think appreciation now of the 105 series sedan is really starting to increase.
I think it is. I think partly it's to do with the collector market forever getting more educated. You know, there's so much stuff out there, the Shannons Club and so many specialist books and other things. I think people are getting more aware. And then when you throw in that fantastic racing double, 64, 65 Sandown, that really does highlight the brilliance of the Giulia.
And certainly the styling was polarising, but I know when cars move into sort of more a classic era, people start to appreciate. I mean, they had low drag bodywork, which made it, you know, an arrow through the air, which helped it win those races. It's sort of like people started to appreciate the Walkinshaw VL Commodore. It was ugly when it came out, but people realised it was designed for a purpose.
Absolutely.
Then you start to appreciate it. I think that's what's happened.
It's form before function. You know, when form and function are married, you've got the ideal arrangement, really. And the Giulia sedan is one of those cars. I mean, you think about it as a sedan, it's a spacious little car.
It is. Yeah.
With a big boot.
Yeah.
And all that, you know, the sort of car you could take your family for a picnic on Saturday and win a race on Sunday.
Well, you would think for a collector too. I mean, that's a great mix, isn't it? A
Yes.
105 coupe and 105 sedan. You got, you know, the perfect pair.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Yes.
We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the long overlooked Alfa Romeo Giulia. We look forward to your company next time on Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.